Welcome to a special Friday the 13th edition of 100 Obscure Horror Films I've Never Seen here at Haunted Hangover. I'm Louie, and in celebration of the unluckiest day of the year, I wanted to watch a film that was sort of a ripoff. You know, and there are a couple. There's a few films out there that are basically outright ripoffs of the Friday the 13th franchise. This is more of a foreign ripoff that I didn't know much about, bought the Blu-ray, and said, you know what, this would be perfect to celebrate Friday the 13th this year. One of 3 Friday the 13ths we'll be having in 2026. Editor Louie here. So I realized after the fact, I never stated what number film this is in my 100 Obscure Horror Films I've Never Seen challenge. So, it's film number 7. Back to the show. And the film in question is Srigala, aka Wolf, the Indonesian Friday the 13th ripoff. So outside of this having a reputation for being an Indonesian Friday the 13th ripoff, I knew nothing about it. This was a blind buy that I thought would go perfectly for this challenge. It was brought to you by the fine folks over at TerraVision. It's got a nice little slipcase here. I'll have better images in the video version. Got this nice Friday the 13th font with a bunch of wild imagery on it. And then you've got this more kind of minimalistic inside cover of the Blu-ray. It's a 2K transfer. Looks pretty good for a movie of this caliber. A little light on the special features, if I'm being honest. Got about 4 interviews here. Some with the actors, with the producer. If you love obscure releases like this, I'd highly recommend adding this to your collection. I don't regret buying this Blu-ray, which kind of hints at how I feel about the film. So Srigala, I'm sure I will mispronounce that a bunch of times throughout the episode, was released in 1981 and directed by Siswaro Gautama Putra. I think I did a good job there, guys. It stars Lydia Kanduo, Barry Prima, Siska Windowati, and Rudy Salam. All Indonesian foreign actors. I'm not familiar with any of them. I did do a brief IMDb search like most people do, and I could see a good chunk of them did work even after this film in TV and some other films and stuff. So that was really cool to see. Yeah, there's not much known, at least on my part, with these people. So this is the film I will gauge the quality of their work on. So Srigala follows 3 men led by the grumpy Mr. Karako and his 2 younger helpers, Tommy and Johan, as they search for buried treasure in a desolate lake. At the same time, we're introduced to 3 younger campers, final girl Nina, her friend Hasty, and their bumbling male companion Pono, who plan to spend the weekend camping in the surrounding woods. Worried that the kids will interfere with his plan, Mr. Karako attempts to scare them off by claiming the area is haunted, but insisting that they're nature lovers, the trio refuse to leave. When a massive storm rolls in, both groups are forced to take shelter in a nearby cabin. From there, things turn deadly as the body count rises and characters are picked off one by one, culminating in a finale that's very blatantly borrowing from the original Friday the 13th from 1980. Now, before I get into my 3 points of why you should totally watch Srigala, I had a blast with this film. I just want to share some of my thoughts, my initial viewing thoughts. I was surprised at how much this film is not a Friday the 13th ripoff. I was expecting a little bit more. Outside of maybe the final 30 minutes and the obvious finale, which is very blatantly influenced by Friday the 13th, a good chunk of the plot is original. Even me reading that synopsis I wrote, there's no treasure in the original Friday the 13th. There's no like thieves looking and hunting for something in a lake. So all of that is original. And I dug how it kind of it had this original idea and then went and veered off into the direction of Friday the 13th. So it surprised me how much of an original concept this movie was. Now, outside of that, there are a few kind of homages to that film, mostly the POV shots, which if you really think about it, the POV angle was used in Friday the 13th, Halloween, Black Christmas. So I don't really consider that a ripoff. It's just more of a cinematography angle, a cinematography shot that a lot of horror films have used. But maybe because this was released in 1981, right after the original Friday the 13th, maybe they were like, you know what, we need POV angles. One thing I did notice too about the cinematography in the film, and this is probably just because this is a low budget movie, those POV shots at times are totally disorienting. You can't tell when it's supposed to be the POV of the killer or just handheld camera. So that was just kind of funny amateur, like an amateur filmmaking mistake. But I still appreciated it. Another element ripped off from the Friday the 13th film that was used in Srigala is the kind of killer in the distance watching our protagonist. So there's a couple of shots where you'll see the main characters having a conversation, or there's a scene where two of them are hooking up, and you can see a killer in the distance. This is a very dark film. So dare I say, the shots where the killer is just lingering way out in the woods are eerie looking. They're effective. I think in the original Friday the 13th, there's maybe one scene that's creepy, and it's when, I forget the camp counselor's name, but he sees someone enter a cabin and then he follows them. That's probably the creepiest scene in the original, whereas in Srigala, there's a couple of shots where you can see the killer in the darkness, and it kind of is unsettling. Also, funny enough, for a film of this caliber, we get some decent performances. Most of the cast is charismatic and fitting different slasher tropes. So you've got like the comedy relief guy with Pono. You have the boy crazy friend who wants to bang the guy. You get the horny young guys with literally one of the main characters. His shirt is one button, just chest out, wanting to be the sexy man. And we get a pretty solid performance with the killer reveal, which I'll be getting to in a minute because that's one of my favorite aspects of this movie. Now, my only real criticism with this film is the lack of any good gore or special effects. We get some fun kills, with my favorite being a character getting the hood of a car slammed on his head, but I'll cut the movie some slack. It's not very bloody, and they didn't have the luxury of having Tom Savini on set like the original Friday the 13th. Now, before I continue, little spoiler warning, because when I get into my 3 points of why you should totally watch this, I am going to spoil some stuff because those are my favorite elements of the film. So if you want to go in blind and you're curious to check this out, just a little warning here at the top. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into my 3 points of why you should watch Srigala. Number 1, it's got some absurd yet extremely amusing scenes. So there's an extended boat chase scene between Tommy and this random masked dude throwing bombs at him while he's in the boat. It's got a few stunts, funny enough. Like, these are more intricate stunts than even the original Friday the 13th, if I'm being honest. So you've got the bad guy boat using Tommy's boat as a ramp, and then the masked bad guy dude's boat crashes onto land and then explodes. I'll be very honest, I don't even remember if that masked dude is ever explained. It's insinuated that these are other people looking for the treasure, I'm guessing, is what they were trying to say with that character, with that random masked dude. But that aside, this scene, chef's kiss at how out of left field it is. I loved it. The next absurd scene in this film that I adore. So the two female lead characters, they have a slut-shaming battle at one point where one's calling the other one a slut, and they have an impromptu fight. And it's bathed in this like synth pulsating score. But the best part of this fight is that there's like a standoff between both women, and they've got like the tiger style pose. like they're about to have this epic fight. I don't know what style of fight this would be. And then the fight just abruptly ends when their friend Pono comes in and one of the girls kick him in the nuts. It's just funny, like seeing them rolling around on the ground and just like the posing. I was like, wait a second, is this going to be like a kung fu movie or something now out of nowhere? It has a little bit of that flavor, but it's just so random. Loved it. There's also a dream sequence involving moss-covered zombies that the final girl, Nina, has. What's so funny about this scene is it comes out of nowhere, similar to their fight scene. She's being chased through the rain, and the reason that they introduce these zombies is because it plays into the ending. There is a plot detail, specifically in the finale, and we needed these zombies to recreate the now infamous jump scare involving the final girl in the boat and something popping out and grabbing her, since this movie has no Jason character. There is one surreal, questionable scene that's definitely a product of the time. So Nina, final girl, is drowning at one point, and Tommy, the studly male, one of the male leads, jumps in to save her. He punches her in the face to knock her out unconscious because she's sort of like frantic and panicking because of the drowning. But yeah, he decks her, knocks her out, and then drags her to her friends and everyone else. I was like, what the hell? Like legitimately under the water, closed fist, knocks her out just to save her. Good job, Tommy. Speaking of drowning, point number 2 of why you should watch Srigala. There's some excellent underwater cinematography in this movie. It's one of my favorite aspects. It's almost dreamlike, and I might be wrong. I think a good chunk of the underwater portions were either at the same lake or almost like in a pool that was set up. The water is so clear. That's why I'm leaning more towards it being a pool with a set underwater, and how much underwater cinematography is in this movie. There's probably like 6 or 7 scenes where we see the characters scuba diving under the water looking for the treasure. Just really beautiful scenes altogether. So the third and final point of why you should totally give this Indonesian Friday the 13th ripoff a chance is the ending. I thought they stuck the landing. It was a solid ass ending. Now they do change things up. There is no mother going to a camp to get revenge and kill counselors because her son drowned. Instead, in this film, we've got a wife going to said lake to kill people out of revenge. So the backstory that kind of plays into the ending and why this is all happening with our antagonist, with our killer wife, Hilda. Basically, Mr. Caraco, the grumpy guy I mentioned in the synopsis, the guy kind of leading the charge in the treasure hunt, he was hired to kill Hilda, to kill her husband, who they lived on the property where the lake is. He had treasure that he had hid. He hid in the lake, and I think when they killed him, they put his body, that's where the zombies play into everything. They take his body, dump it in the lake. He had treasure. They didn't know where the treasure was. They just knew it was in the lake. She comes back out of revenge because I guess she feels the treasure belongs to her. The 3 young people, they're just wrong place, wrong time. They have nothing to do with this woman, the treasure, or the treasure hunters, or Hilda herself. So they're just innocent bystanders. She's just going there to kill them. And dare I say, the reveal of Hilda, way more menacing than Mrs. Voorhees at the end of the original Friday the 13th. There's a scene where Nina, the final girl, is inside of the cabin and Hilda's outside. And this is before where she has her James Bond villain moment where she explains why she's doing this. But we see her eyes in it's almost like a mail slot situation, but there's like a hole in the wall. And you just see her eyes. You see this white makeup and eyeliner. And it's just a really eerie looking shot. It's effective. And the actress portraying her does a great job just kind of like beating up Nina at the end. They go back and forth. You know, I'll even say that the fight scene in the finale of this movie gives the original fight scene from Friday the 13th a run for its money. We get that Tiger style stuff again that happens where Nina starts to pose like she's gonna do some moves on Hilda. There's slapping, there's chops and all kinds of rolling on the ground. I thought it was a lot of fun. And this film also has the jump scare. I mentioned it before, how there's zombies in a dream sequence. So in Srigala, what happens is Hilda's killed, Nina ends up in a boat out on the lake, and the body of Hilda's husband, all mossy like her dream sequence, pops up out of the lake and grabs her, dragging her in. So they basically have that entire dream sequence to set up the Friday the 13th ripoff boat jump scare at the very end of the film. It even ends with Nina in a hospital saying that the husband, the zombified husband, came out of the lake and grabbed her. I just thought altogether the ending, they changed up enough where you can see it's obviously inspired by Friday the 13th, but not to a T. So I appreciated them taking an existing, portion of a film and changing it up for their own movie. But in closing, I had a great time with this flick. It's definitely the type of movie you want to watch with a group of friends, have a couple drinks, smoke some of that wacky tobacco. It is Friday the 13th after all. There is some absurd, ridiculous stuff in this movie. You almost feel like the filmmakers knew that going in because of how surreal some of these set pieces feel. Or if you just want to freshen things up this Friday the 13th and you're tired, respectfully, of our boy Jason Voorhees, then I totally, absolutely would recommend Srigala. So that was Srigala, aka Wolf, aka the Indonesian Friday the 13th ripoff. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, all that good stuff at Haunted Hangover. Head over to hauntedhangover.com where you can find links to everything, including our Patreon page, where if you want to show us a little love, show us a little support, you can gain access to a plethora of bonus content we have over there. Rate and review us. It'd be greatly appreciated. And as always, remember, the best cure for a hangover is more booze. Happy Friday the 13th, guys.